Now moving on with my top 40 quarterback rankings, I have now reached the number 5 and 6 players on this list, and that will be in alphabetical order: Matt Ryan and then Russell Wilson. They're two players that are definitely pretty comparable. Matt Ryan actually coming off of what might have been his best season as a starter. I mean, it's either this season or his MVP season, and while he was so great in his MVP season where he threw for 4,944 yards and 38 touchdowns to just 7 interceptions, last year he actually put up basically the same numbers, but just with less help. I mean, he threw for 4,924 yards, so just 20 less yards, just 3 less touchdowns, and the same amount of interceptions with 7. Granted, he did throw the ball a lot more. I mean, he actually averaged 9.3 yards per attempt in 2016, which is just absurd, whereas this year he went back down to earth with 8.1. Still an incredible number, and actually the second best of his career, but just not quite at that absurd 9.3 level. Meanwhile, Russell Wilson amazingly had the same amount of touchdowns and the same amount of interceptions. They both had 35 touchdowns and 7 interceptions last year. Of course, Matt Ryan's yardage totals were a lot higher, but Russell Wilson also rushed for a decent amount of yards. And also part of it comes into the fact that they do play two very different systems. The Falcons like to throw the ball a lot more, whereas the Seahawks like to run the ball a lot more, so Ryan's bulk totals are going to tend to be up in terms of passing yards. But okay, enough about statistics. They're pretty similar in the statistic battle, so we'll watch the tape and determine who do we feel is better. And one thing you're going to think of right off the bat is that, well, Russell Wilson definitely is a more mobile quarterback than Ryan. And while of course that is true, and there's no debating that, Ryan can actually still use his legs to a degree. Like on this play, it's going to be a cover one hole, and they have a receiver running that route right there, which again, it could get open if Ryan has enough time to hit the receiver after he gets past that middle of the field where there would be an extra player in the area. But once he gets really past the hash marks in the bottom half of the screen, that's when he could get open. But Ryan is just going to have to wait and see if he has enough time to make that throw, because he might not. But it is something he might want to look to throw to, and I mean, as you see right now, that receiver is definitely open, but of course there's a Redskin who has dropped back into coverage and who is in the area. So if Ryan tried to make this throw now, it would be an interception, so he does have to wait until his receiver gets further to the bottom half of the screen. However, he's not just going to do that. Watch what he does. He's going to run down to the bottom half of the screen and make a throw on the run, so that way he guarantees he has enough time to make that throw. He's also able to make a very athletic throw on the run, and they're able to pick up a first down and more. I mean, just a really good play by Ryan there. That's kind of in a lot of ways why I feel like Matt Ryan doesn't really get talked about as much as he should. It's simply just because he's such a technically good quarterback, but he's just not the most flashy quarterback. I mean, he does everything well, but there's nothing that he does that you're like, oh, right, that's the kind of guy Matt Ryan is. There's guys like Mahomes and Rodgers who have those flashy plays where they'll throw on the run 60 yards down the field. Drew Brees has the insane accuracy and just the historically great seasons. Tom Brady has all of his rings and postseason success. Russell Wilson also has a lot of postseason success and his running ability. So, for a guy like Matt Ryan, who kind of just goes about his business and does everything very well, but isn't exactly the most flashy player, well, for casual fans, they won't talk about him as much. Not to mention, his name is even kind of boring. I mean, Matt Ryan, it just doesn't really stand out. I do think those things factor into why he is a bit underrated in my opinion. One thing that definitely does help Atlanta and helps Matt Ryan is the fact that they have always had at least one good receiver, if not a good entire receiving core. But he also knows how to use guys to his advantage to kind of give them a better chance of winning their one-on-one matchups. Like on this play, it's a cover one blitz, and so the best route that they're going to have that's going to try to beat this coverage will be that route right over there, because it's a route that goes over in the middle, and it could get open. And of course, it helps that that's Julio Jones' route. But I don't really think you can hold against him too much that he has Julio Jones or some other good receivers, because Matt Ryan knows how to help his receivers. I've said this before, but this isn't a situation where Matt Ryan makes Julio Jones look better or Julio Jones makes Matt Ryan look better. They both make each other look better. And watch this. At the beginning of this route, okay, he's kind of open here. There's some separation, not a ton of separation, but there is some. However, Ryan is still going to make an absolutely perfect throw, and Julio Jones just isn't going to drop those too often, and that's what results in a big gain. But really, if you do see Julio Jones in a one-on-one matchup, even if there is some separation, not a ton of separation, you want to make that throw, because even if you miss the throw, Julio Jones can bail you out and still find a way to make that catch. Now that time, Ryan didn't miss the throw, he still made that throw, and there wasn't a ton of separations. So, I don't think the fact that it was Julio Jones he was throwing to, you can really hold that against Ryan too much there. It's more so that was the correct decision for Ryan to make. He saw a receiver that he's like, okay, you're a good receiver, I know you can make those catches, so you have some separation, I'm going to try to make a good throw, but even if I miss it, I still trust that you can find a way to make that catch. It's a smart play, and it resulted in a big gain. I kind of use the comparison of there's the old saying where it's a poor carpenter that blames their tools, well, it's also a poor carpenter who doesn't use their tools correctly. Well, Matt Ryan uses his tools correctly, and when you're trying to break down a brick wall, don't use a wrench, use a sledgehammer, and Julio Jones is Matt Ryan's sledgehammer. I also don't know exactly if you should try to break down a brick wall with a sledgehammer. Believe it or not, I have never had to actually try to break down a brick wall. But, you know, I'm guessing here. It's an analogy. Just bear with me here. Anyways, take a look at this play. It's going to be a cover 2 man, and that's going to be Julio's route. So, you know, just running straight down the field. Hopefully he'll get open. Nothing really too fancy about this one. But take a look at how much separation he's going to create. And the reality is he doesn't really create that much separation. If you notice when I pause these plays to show how open these guys are, usually I won't pause it later on in the play. I'll pause it just right before the quarterback has to make their decision. I like to pause these plays when the quarterback still has the ball in their hands, because it's unfair to look at it and say, oh look, he was open, he should have thrown it there, but sometimes a guy gets open after the ball was already thrown. And again, it's kind of one of those situations where, okay, you know, the defensive player is going to have to turn his back, so that's kind of why Ryan likes that throw a little bit, but it also kind of goes back to the same thing earlier of like, hey, I'm just going to throw it to Julio Jones, and if I miss this throw, he'll find a way to make the catch half the time. However, once again, Julio Jones doesn't really have to make a tough catch. It's just a perfect throw for Ryan. I mean, it's not a particularly easy catch, but, you know, it's a catch that pretty much any NFL player should be able to make, and of course, Julio is going to make those consistently. And it's not just making deep passes or things like that. I mean, this guy is an all-around good quarterback, you know? Like in a play like this, it's going to be pretty simple. It's a cover 2 zone, and the way this is going to work for Atlanta is they're going to run play action, and then have a receiver run that route right there. I think you can probably figure out why you would do this. Hopefully it'll draw the linebacker in. You can throw it over the linebacker, create a decent gain. Pretty simple and something you'll see quite often. But notice what happens once this ball is snapped. Well, Ryan's receiver is kind of open, only kind of. There definitely is a defender right in that way, so this is not an easy throw for Ryan to make. And not just that, but Ryan has to make his decision instantly. He can't wait around and try to figure something out, because the longer if he waits an extra half second, this play's over, he can't throw it to that receiver. But he doesn't hesitate, throws it at the perfect time, and also throws it at the perfect spot, and that's what results in a completion for a first down. These are not easy plays to make by any means. I mean, this takes a veteran-style quarterback to make these types of plays, and that's exactly what Ryan is. So yeah, that's Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan is a very good player. But now let's move on to Russell Wilson. Is Russell Wilson better than Matt Ryan? Well, let's talk about it. So let's start things off with this play. This is very much a staple of the Seattle offense, where basically the way it's going to work is it's going to be cover 3 zone, as the Panthers do run a lot of cover 3. So, you know, the Seahawks can't be prepared for something like this, but, you know, it's something very similar to the play I just showed you last time, where it's going to be play action, and then they're going to have a receiver just run and try to get in between those zones right there, in between the safety and in between the linebackers in front of him. If the linebackers move in, they'll be more out of position, and there will be a gap that Russell Wilson can try to make this throw to. Again, something relatively easy, but what you're actually going to notice is how well this play works. I mean, if you see that receiver is just going to be way open, and there's a couple of reasons for that. There's a couple of reasons for why the linebackers did move so far in. One of those reasons is just because the Seattle Seahawks run the ball a lot. I mean, you have to be prepared for runs against the Seahawks, which is partially how they're able to be so effective with using play action. But, you know, it was also just a well-executed play all around. You know, everyone did their part, and no one really gave anything away, which helped fool the Panthers. But again, watch what Russell Wilson has to do. He still has to make this throw at a perfect time, and sometimes it can be a little bit more pressure now, just because there's going to be a lot more Panthers in your area. Everyone was expecting a run, so there's just more guys to worry about blocking at this point. But Wilson is still going to be patient and not throw this one too early, but he does throw it at the perfect time, which leads to a big completion. Patience is key in a quarterback. You know, you want to make sure you're making these throws at the perfect time to pick up as many yards as possible. Sometimes guys get a little bit too anxious, see a guy's open and hit him right away, but sometimes there's going to be something that's more open later down the field, or sometimes just that route in general will be more open if you wait an extra second. Like that's what happened there. He waited an extra second to allow his receiver to pick up even more yards. You also can't wait too much, obviously, because then someone else could potentially, you know, run over and sort of knock the ball away. But you have to be smart about it, and you have to time these plays well, and that's what Wilson does. Another play the Seahawks like to run, another rather simple one, is something like this, where it's clearly going to be just a one-on-one matchup on the bottom half of the screen, and so Seattle's going to have a curl route. Nothing too fancy, but you know, you don't have to be fancy all the time. Everyone loves these creative play calls that Sean McVay or, you know, Josh McDaniels or some of these guys will draw up, but sometimes you just have to be very simple and just do things that can be successful, and that's what this play kind of is. And as you see, once this ball is snapped, I mean, that's just great separation. This is going to be easy. But once again, these types of plays, I mean, timing is very important. I mean, Wilson does make this throw, it's able to be a completion, you know, good play by Wilson, but these plays are definitely actually pretty risky. Well, a lot of times they can result in easy completions. If he misses the throw, or if he just, you know, doesn't time it well, it can result in not just not being a catch, but it can result in a pick six. In fact, we have seen that happen to Wilson earlier this year. While he doesn't throw many interceptions, we have seen something like that happen. But that's going to happen no matter what. I mean, the fact of the matter is, Russell Wilson is very good at those types of throws. He can make them relatively consistently with, you know, few notable mistakes, but as a whole, he's definitely very good at those types of plays, and that's what results in them being able to pick up first downs pretty consistently. One thing I do actually like about Wilson is I do feel like he fits this system very well. You know, the fact that they run the ball a lot, I feel like he can really thrive in this type of system, and he can really make some great plays, and this one will be an example of that, where what's going to happen is first you're actually going to see the tight end start off blocking. And so, okay, if it is going to be like a run, for example, you would obviously have your tight end blocking, and then they'll have the tight end run a route, and the idea behind this is that he could get open because Denver will be afraid that this is going to be a running play. And it's going to work out perfectly. I mean, if you see, the second that Wilson's tight end does get off his block, he's going to be open. But this is actually kind of a tricky throw for Wilson to make, because for one thing, there is going to be pressure that comes at him very soon, so he can't just wait as long as he wants to make this throw. But he also can't just roll out of the pocket because there's another Denver Bronco who's sort of in the area, so he can't take as long as he wants to make this throw either. He is going to have to make this throw at kind of a perfect time. Not to mention he can't just hit the player now because there still is a Bronco in the area, but there will be some separation in a quick second. So what he's going to do is kind of lob this one and put it in a perfect spot where his tight end is able to make that catch and run into the end zone for a touchdown. I mean, really, that's a perfect throw. That's exactly where you would want it. If you're a quarterback's coach, you would have said, yep, great job. Have nothing else to add to that. Good play, Wilson. And this one will be another example of that, where once again, okay, clearly a one-on-one matchup. There's only one Ram on the bottom half of the screen, and since Seattle's receiver is going to be running just a deep route to the end zone, this could be a route that Wilson could look to throw to. And one thing you'll see after this play develops, this is actually an interesting situation, because on one hand, yes, that Ram is a few yards further deep than the receiver is. However, on the other hand, he's also facing basically straight down, straight away from Wilson. So he kind of has good positioning, but he won't be able to see where Wilson is throwing the ball. So that's kind of a bad thing for that defensive back, and therefore a good thing for Seattle. So Wilson's going to take a shot there, and he's basically just trusting that his receiver can make the play. You know, at first glance, that might just look like Tyler Lockett making a great play, but it really isn't. That's Wilson realizing, hey, my receiver is in much better positioning than that defensive back, so I'm going to put it up there and let him make a play. That is a lot of what being a quarterback is letting your playmakers make plays. You know, you pay all these skill position players a lot of money, so make them get their money's worth. Your job is to simply put it in a position where they can make that play, and Wilson does that pretty consistently. So okay, that's kind of Russell Wilson and Matt Ryan to a T. You know, I've talked about both of these guys a lot over the past almost year now that I've been making these videos, but I like both of these guys a lot. You know, Wilson is kind of interesting because I feel like when he actually won his Super Bowl, he was far from the player that he is now. I feel like he has gotten a lot better with age, and he kind of was in that situation where a lot of people kind of said, oh no, he just got dragged to win a Super Bowl by his defense. And while that wasn't really true, he definitely played his role. He also definitely wasn't dragging the defense to his Super Bowl. You know, that was a team effort. But recently, he's definitely come into his own and turned into one of the better football players in the league, and in my opinion, at least a top 6 or 5 player in the league. Meanwhile, Ryan is kind of the opposite, you know? I mean, the guy's never won a Super Bowl. And in fact, the one Super Bowl he has played in, well, granted, he did actually have the highest passer rating in a Super Bowl loss. I mean, a lot of that was, let's be honest, their big collapse at the end of Super Bowl 51. I mean, you can't talk about that Super Bowl without bringing that up. So in terms of the big games, some people might give the edge to Russell Wilson, but again, keep in mind that Matt Ryan did actually make an incredible throw at the end of that Super Bowl in the famous Julio Jones catch that ended up not really impacting much as it turned out. At the time, that was a huge play by both Ryan and Julio. I mean, he was on to run and made one of the best throws of his life, just unfortunately for him, it didn't really end up mattering too much. But it also should be mentioned that, you know, he was given an opportunity after the Patriots tied it to just go down the field and try to kick a field goal for the game winner, but he wasn't able to get anything going. And while yes, Russell Wilson has won a Super Bowl, the reason why he hasn't won two was because of the famous Malcolm Butler play. Although also worth mentioning, he was so instrumental in that comeback against Green Bay. He was playing so well at the end of that game, even though he played so poorly up until that point. And while Matt Ryan did have his second highest yards per attempt ever last year at 8.1, Russell Wilson has actually done that 3 times in his career, although his highest is 8.3, whereas of course Matt Ryan's is 9.3. But also worth mentioning, Russell Wilson has never had the team that Matt Ryan had when he did average 9.3 yards per attempt. But when it comes down to it, I think I am going to give the edge to Matt Ryan, and I think a large part of the reason why I'm doing that is because I feel like the fact that Russell Wilson kind of plays in a run-first system does kind of go against him a little bit. It makes things easier for him in a lot of ways, and I do think that it really helps him in that sense. I know Russell Wilson always gets talked about, oh, his line's always been terrible. Well, we saw what Matt Ryan could do last year with a bad line, and that was still play very well. Ryan's also been in the league for a bit longer, so he just has some more experience, so that's also why I'm going to put Ryan ahead of Wilson, but I do think it's very close. I think they're both very good players. And so that's what I think, and that's my reasoning for it. I'd love to know what you guys think. Who's better, Matt Ryan or Russell Wilson? So anyways, that's Russell Wilson and Matt Ryan. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and as always, thanks for watching.